My family grew up in the former USSR, the Republic of Georgia. So my parents are both from Tbilisi in Georgia. And growing up, when you grow up in a communist regime, if you're vulnerable, you can get into a lot of trouble. If you start talking about things and sharing things, it's probably not the best thing for you. So my parents modeled very, very different types of parenting and leadership. My mom was always more emotionally open and encouraging me to talk about my feelings. But as a young boy, I grew up modeling my dad and emulating my dad's behavior. And my dad was very much, nobody cares about your problems. Nobody cares about your feelings. These are burdens that you shouldn't be putting onto other people. And it's nobody's business. And I mean, even to this day, it's hard to extract stories about the past from my dad. And I actually remember when I was much younger and I was playing soccer in AYSO, I must have been, 10 years old or something like that, maybe even younger. And we finished competing in a soccer tournament, and we go to my coach's house and we're going to pick up some trophies. And the coach goes into his house, he grabs his trophy, he brings it out, and my dad looks at this trophy and he's like, "What the hell is this? They got last place. Why are they getting a trophy?" And the coach is like, "Well, it's a participation trophy. We want all the kids to feel like they participated." And my dad looks at me, he looks at the trophy, he gives the trophy back to the coach and is like, "We're good, you can keep that. Son, get in the car." Right? So that's how I grew up. Yeah, so I grew up, where this was, and again, balanced between my mom and my dad, but I grew up watching my dad. So I was never vulnerable. Didn't talk about feelings, emotions, none of that kind of stuff, because that's how I grew up. And so a couple of years ago, when I actually signed this was shortly after I signed the contract for this book. It was maybe 1 or 2 weeks after I signed the contract for this book. And I'm standing in the kitchen, or not the kitchen, sorry, the bathroom. It's the morning, probably 7:30, something like that, just woke up. And I'm standing there brushing my teeth. I'm looking in the mirror. And all of a sudden I get this really, really weird feeling. And my vision gets blurry. My heart starts racing. I start getting out of breath. And I'm overcome with just dread and terror. The feeling that I'm getting a heart attack. And I freaked out. I'm screaming for my wife, "Blake, get in here, something's wrong." I lay down on the bed, and my body starts convulsing. And so I was freaking out. And I went to the emergency room, and this was going on during the holidays. And what made it really hard is that I couldn't get an appointment with my doctor because it was during the holidays. I made my wife drive me to the ER. She convinced me not to actually go in there. Long story short, after going through all of this, I finally get an appointment with my doctor. And, they say, "Okay, let's check your heart and make sure you're okay." And they check my heart and they're like, "You're great." And I'm somebody who is a little bit of a health and fitness nut. I try to eat healthy. I take care of myself. And the doctor looks at me and she's like, "You might want to go see a different kind of doctor." And I'm looking to her like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, a different kind of doctor. And at that point, I understood that she meant that, I should go talk to a therapist. So I went to go talk to a therapist, and after a couple sessions, she's like, "Yeah, you had a panic attack." And after a couple sessions, it turned out that one of the causes for that panic attack was the fact that I was writing this book to begin with. It was the fact that I chose to write a book about vulnerability, which is something that is very foreign to me and something that goes against a lot of the stuff that I've practiced. So that was a very, very big pivotal moment for me. And at that point I realized, well, there's something really here. And I started to get really interested in the concept of leadership and vulnerability. And I remembered when I wrote my last book, The Future Leader, I interviewed 140 CEOs for that one. And I remember doing these interviews, and a lot of the CEOs were talking about vulnerability. They were talking about emotional intelligence. They were talking about a lot of this stuff, but they were also sharing that there were a lot of challenges behind it. They knew it was important, but they didn't know exactly how to approach it. What happens if it gets used against you? They were just struggling, trying to find a guide and resources for how to actually turn a concept into something real inside their organizations. And so I remembered that I have this panic attack, and I thought, well, let's try to marry these two things together. And that's what set me out on this research project of the 100 CEOs and the 14,000 employees. So I'd say that was a very big pivotal moment for me, which, plunged me head on into this topic.